Okay. So even though the yogic system is not an aspect of the Hindu religion, it was generated in India, and most Indians are Hindu. Although that's slowly changing. A large number of Indians are Hindu. This means that all of the teachers, or many of the teachers who learned the yogic system, already had a Hindu faith base, and they practiced the two side by side. So when yoga became kind of incorporated and moved over to the West, you're going to notice a lot of Hindu religious behaviors attached to yogic practices. In truth, yoga has nothing to do with Hinduism. It is a scientific, qualified technology that is a step-by-step roadmap of techniques to reach an enlightened state where one realizes God's source. Boom. There really aren't any deifics within within the yoga system. However, the Hindu system has a really rich and lovely way of looking at creation, and the gods and goddesses of the Hindu pantheon have made their way into some of our yogic practices. So even though I'm not Hindu and I don't often use a lot of the Sanskrit chants, it's worthy of note to go through the Hindu pantheon so that when you do join into any type of bhakti, B-H-A-K-T-I, bhakti tradition or devotional tradition where the Hindu pantheon is present, you have a working knowledge and understanding of who these deities are and what their aspects represent. So my daughter just nailed me the other day, and she said, "Mommy, what does aspect mean? You use this word a lot." And I didn't have an answer for her. You know, trying to explain aspecting to an 8-year-old requires a depth of language that I am not proficient in. But I feel that all of you should be able to grasp what I mean when I say aspect. Meaning that, you know, within that one cosmic source of consciousness or God that the Judeo-Christian and Muslim tradition follows, there are no ways for humans to really bite into. God is everything. Well, you know what? I'm small, right? I'm contained within boundaries, even though the more I practice, the more I realize I'm not. But that took a lot of time to get to, right? It's very hard for me, being a contained, individualized being, to have a full and utter relationship with something that has no boundaries and is everything. There's an intellectual snap there that a lot of people get hung up on, and I did for many, many years. What you find, though, when you start going into aspects is that a or a pantheistic type of cosmology will help you take little bites out of that gigantic, God concept, because you can find something of yourself within them. And that is, I believe, how, the Greek gods and the Roman gods and the old gods came to be, because we as humans were trying to not necessarily justify, but find ourselves on a larger, more cosmic level, but we also needed to relate and retain some of our human qualities. And I hope that sentence made sense. So an aspect is a reflection of a human quality filtered with divine presence. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a really common Greek goddess, Aphrodite. Okay, Aphrodite represents about this much out of the god spectrum, right? She is the goddess of sensual love. That's what she does. And as a human, when I am trying to bring more divinity into my sensuality or into my sexuality, instead of saying I need to take this entire God force and squeeze it down into this little thing and then pull it in and hope that it's just what I'm looking for, you go to this one deity. who has already aspected that quality, right? I need to experience my divinity in my sensuality. I can go to Aphrodite, who has the qualities that I exhibit and that I want to enhance, but she also has the qualities of the full force of the divine, if that makes sense. So an aspect is a human reflection or a human quality built with the full force of divine behind it. So, those of us who are Western, sometimes it's hard to relate to the Eastern pantheon, simply because they don't have the same cultural framework than we have. They have a different idea of the individual's relationship within the whole. Although, as we as Westerners are starting to become more group-oriented, those Eastern gods and goddesses are kind of rising up, which is one of the reasons why I think that the yoga culture has adopted them so strongly, because they now do have relevance for those of us who are seeking to experience a different way of relating to God through the aspect. Long introduction for a lot of stories. So get out a pen and paper, please, and kind of draw yourself a tree, of the gods and the goddesses. In the beginning, again, there was consciousness, and there's a bit of a split, an ideological split. It's very small about whether or not it was Brahma, Brahma, or Vishnu, Vishnu, who was the first god. Okay, and this god was sleeping on, in the sea of cosmic consciousness, and had a dream. And in this dream, from his belly button grew a lotus flower. And within the lotus flower were the three primary gods of the Hindu pantheon. We call them the Trinity. And they were Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So Brahma is the god of creation. It is said that one of his days represents an insane number of years for humans, and one of his years is an age. And the Hindus have mathematically done this. It's like 1,816,000,000. I mean, it's an enormous number, and I really encourage you to look it up, just because it's fascinating, but it's not something that sticks with me, sorry. But Brahma is responsible for the cycles of creations and the ages. So Brahma is the creative aspect. And people will pray to Brahma so that they can bring up creativity within themselves. What has happened, interestingly, is that his consort, because in the Hindu pantheon there is no god without a goddess, right? It's really lovely the way that is, the duality is firmly represented. The consort of Brahma, or his wife, is Sarasvati, Sarasvati, Sarasvati. And she is the goddess of wisdom, beauty, literature, art, music. So she is the goddess of the arts. Okay, so when people are looking for creativity, they'll go to Sarasvati instead of Brahma. And Brahma has slowly become the god you go to when you're looking for a favor. Right? So if you need a little extra boost, like I need a favor, you go to Brahma. But if you're looking for inspiration, you go to Sarasvati. So together they create the creator aspect of the god-goddess life force. You'll see that the spirit animal that's associated with Brahma is Hamsa, Hamsa, which is the eagle. So the eagle takes them and they can see far and wide the creation. So the preserver aspect, so once everything is created, we like to have somebody or a god force who's going to make sure that it doesn't fall apart, is Vishnu, Vishnu. And his consort is Lakshmi, Laksmi, although sometimes there's an H in there, Lakhshmi. So Vishnu and Lakshmi are the preserver aspects of the Trinity. Vishnu is one of the most worshipped gods in the Hindu Trinity, mostly because he has a strong Jesus connotation. And if you are Christian, please do not get freaked out by that. But Jesus is known as, in my understanding, he is like the preserver of us, right? He loves us and he cares for us and he wants to take care of us. And Vishnu is the same way, okay? Vishnu incarnates more often, well, actually Vishnu is the only one, I think, who incarnates, comes into existence when humanity is particularly threatened. So they have categorized 10 incarnations of Vishnu. And I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. Lakshmi, his wife, is the goddess of prosperity and wealth, right? So you can kind of see how those two fit together. Lakshmi is also an insanely popular deity in the Hindu pantheon, meaning that like in a lot of home temples, the Hindus will have a sacred home temple and an altar where they give puja, right? They give thanks and they give offerings and they give their love to their deific, to their house god. And, you know, in my experience, like 8 times out of 10, it's Lakshmi. Because, hey man, why not, right? So Lakshmi and Vishnu are the preserver aspects. One of the stories of Vishnu is when he returned as a dwarf, okay? And his name started with an M. I'm sorry that I don't remember it at this moment. But a giant was threatening the earth, right? And he had taken everything over, and he was not leaving any land for the humans to live on. And so humans being humans, they called out to their gods, like, hey, you know, I really need help. And Vishnu incarnated and came into being as a dwarf. And this dwarf went up to the giant and was, you know, hey man, you're being a pig, you're hogging all the land. And he said, hey, how about whatever land I can cross in 3 strides, you will give to the humans and the rest you can keep. And the giant thought this was a grand joke because, well, he was a giant and this cat was a dwarf. At which point Vishnu comes up in his full aspect of glory as Vishnu and takes 3 giant bounds, which encompass the entirety of the earth, which is how Earth became the domain of humans and not the domain of giants. So in that incarnation, he's called the Far Strider. Okay, so Vishnu does this kind of thing all the time. One of his most famous incarnations is that of Ram, R-A-M, and Ram's consort was Sita, S-I-T-A. And you'll hear chants all the time, Ram, Ram, Sita, Ram, 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 Sita, Ram, Sita, Ram, Sita, Ram, 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 Sita, Ram, which is a very nice and beautiful chant to do. Actually, has great rhythm and feels very, very good. And Ram and Sita were what you could consider the ultimate married couple, right? They were the consummate partners, a king and a queen. And they're noted for their devotion. And this takes the form of their, not necessarily spirit animal, but he's kind of a random rogue god that is associated with Ram and Sita. And you can read the entire story of Ram and Sita in the Ramayana, R-A-M-A-Y-A-N-A, which is one of the seminal texts in the Hindu pantheon, or in the Hindu spiritual works. So what's associated with Ram and Sita that embodies their great devotion is Hanuman, H-A-N-U-M-A-N, J-J-J, Hanuman. And Hanuman was the monkey king. Hanuman came into the service of Sita and Ram and performed incredible acts of faith and devotion to them. And it is said that when Hanuman cracked open his chest to show his heart, inside his heart were sitting Ram and Sita. And this is how much Hanuman loved and devoted to this king and queen couple. There's one story where, and it's a little bit of a, it has different stories of the same story, but it involves the ring. And the ring had been thrown across the ocean to an island all the way out in the middle of the ocean. And Sita, this was Sita's marriage ring, and she wanted to get this ring back, but it was so far away, and she looked at Hanuman and she said, please get this back for me. And without thinking, right, without thinking of the great distance, he leapt across the ocean to get Sita's ring and bring it back to her. And that act is represented in the asana we call Hanumanasana, which is the full forward splits. But it represents having such faith and love for your deity that you can perform outstanding acts. It's the quintessential leap of faith. Okay, so we pray to Hanuman when we want to call in that moment where we know we have to do something outstanding and we're not quite sure how we're going to get there, right? Jai 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 Hanuman, Jai 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 Hanuman. And that's what you're doing, is pulling down that kind of like faith and love of Hanuman for Ram and Sita, which are aspects of Vishnu and Lakshmi. Okay, so that's kind of how, how the incarnations happen. Another great incarnation of Vishnu is very famous is Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, and his wife Radha, Radha. So when Krishna was a little boy, right, his mom made him open his mouth. I think she was looking at his teeth. And when he opened his mouth and she looked within, she could see the entirety of the universe inside this little boy. And she knew that he was special, that he was a god. And he was also blue, so that might have given her a cue as well. So whereas Ram and Sita were the ultimate devoted couple, right? They were the power couple. Krishna and Radha were the ultimate lovers, which anybody who's been married and or had a lover can tell you there's a very distinct difference in that, right? Krishna was not always faithful, but Radha loved him with all of her being. She was his lover. He was considered, I think he was a shepherd or a goat herder, and would play the beautiful flute. And all of the gopis, or the goat shepherdesses, would flock to him. And Radha was one of these, and he chose her and mated with her. So when we use Ram and Sita for that kind of devoted love, but we use Krishna and Radha for that deep spiritual lover connection. So you see within aspects there are even further aspects. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna is a huge deal, and he is one of the incarnations of Vishnu. So when you hear these chants, right, they're actually chants to Vishnu, even though they're chants to Krishna or chants to Ram and Sita. Now, getting into the fringe of Vishnu's incarnations, there is the thought from some bhakti yogis that Buddha was an incarnation of Vishnu, because all of these incarnations turned up at a point in time when humanity was in need of the preserver, of a champion. So Ram was a great warrior, Krishna was a great savior, and Buddha was, of course, an amazing thinker. So at the point when we needed, as a species, we needed someone to come in and say, no, you're looking at it all wrong. No, try it differently. Buddha came to us, came to earth as a human, and the story of Buddha under the Bodhisattva tree is one to take to heart, right? Sitting still and letting nature and letting the God force direct you and tell you what is true. Interestingly, Buddha's consort was not in a mated pair, right? It was not a bonded pair, but the tale of Buddha and Ananda, Ananda, could very easily represent a pair bond, even though both of them were men and it was completely asexual. But Buddha wandered the countryside for much of his life as a beggar, and Ananda was his companion throughout these years. And it was Ananda who protected Buddha, and it was Ananda who was most often used in story and in tale to enact the lessons that Buddha was trying to teach. So a bit like a fable, right? So there's one great story where Buddha was, of course, begging, And there did come a point in time when the sadhus, or the seekers, had become so thick in the Indian countryside that the peasants were very, very taxed by having to feed them. Because that's written into their culture, was written into their culture, that when a seeker came to you with his bowl, you were obligated to put something in the bowl, whatever you had, to help them, sustain themselves. And most often it was food or water. And so Buddha came to a town that had already seen a huge rash of sadhus come through, and he knocked on a good wife's door, and she had a baby inside. And when he held out his bowl, she was furious. She became so angry because she didn't know how she was supposed to feed her baby when she kept giving all of her food to the seekers. And so in a fit of rage, she reached into the baby's diaper and grabbed, poop and threw it into the Buddha's bowl. Of course, not knowing that he was Buddha at that moment, he was just another sadhu. And Buddha said, thank you for your donation. And he turned around and walked away. And it was Ananda who became incensed at her behavior. It was Ananda who demonstrated the ego, saying, doesn't she know who she is, who you are, and how dare she, treat you this way? And Buddha said, that is what she had to offer me. And as seekers, we must accept whatever is offered to us, whether it is pleasant or unpleasant. And if you look way down deep, that's an amazing lesson in preservation, right? How to get through life is that we accept with this neutral mind, this equanimous mind, everything that we are given, and become neutral within it. I'm sorry, I stuttered that out. So the Buddha-Ananda relationship is another reflection of the Vishnu-Lakshmi preserver paradigm. And finally, if you want to keep rolling out on that limb of Vishnu, the preserver, incarnating at times when people needed a savior the most, then there are people who think that Jesus himself was an incarnation of this god Vishnu, who came to earth to spread the message. Jesus and Krishna have a very, very similar love relationship. Love is in the heart, Church is in the heart. Love everyone as you love yourself. And, again, we can also talk about that God-goddess relationship. Mary Magdalene was the feminine counterpart. She was Jesus' consort, and she protected him and cared for him. And Jesus did turn up on the earth at a point in time when man needed him to express the values that he came here to express. So Vishnu, the preserver, really has a lot to do with love of humanity and love of the world. And I don't mean the secular world, but love of the world of humans. And a lot of people pray to him to maintain that world. Because on the other side of Vishnu is Shiva, Lord Shiva. And Shiva is the destroyer. He destroys all of the illusions of this world. He destroys everything that you believe to be true about yourself so that you can see the true nature of reality and creation. The universe. And Shiva, at the end of one of Brahma's cycles, right, destroys the world. He destroys it. Gone. And then what's supposed to happen is that Brahma picks that up again and a new cycle begins, right? So in the Hindu concept of the universe, we are constantly undergoing a series of creations, preservations, and destructions. And it's complete destruction. Boom. So there's a great circuit and cycle that's in play. Not unlike the energetic cycle that you see present in the body, or the spiritual cycles that we find ourselves experiencing when we experience the death of the ego or the death of our own world. So yogis are always praying to Shiva, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, essentially saying, and I hope most of them realize it when they're doing it, please destroy me, right? Destroy that which needs to be destroyed so that I can begin to create from a more authentic place, from a place where I understand what reality is, and now I'm going to build from there. And that death, that type of death, or that type of destruction can happen many times and on many different scales within the course of one single human lifetime. So Shiva is the god of destruction. He's also the dancer. And that dance that he does is what starts the destruction and stimulates creation. So there are a couple weird things that happen with Shiva. He's actually got two wives, or they're the same wife who does different things. It could just be that she has two names. And I've never actually come clear on this. No matter how much I've looked into it, it always feels like two distinct beings. But I think it's only one. Don't quote me on that. So the consort of Shiva is Parvati, P-A-R-V-A-T-I, Parvati. And she really is what would be considered the long-suffering wife. Parvati, I'll tell you, okay, Parvati. So Shiva was, of course, a great meditator because he gave us the science of yoga. And once, down in their home on the ocean floor, he heard the people of the world crying out for salvation. Please give us a technique, or give us something that is going to help us ease our suffering. And so he went into his meditative trance and began to talk, and from his words came the entire science of yoga. Before he fell into trance, he said to his wife, Parvati, hey, I need you to take notes because I'm not going to remember this when I'm done. And so he started talking, and she was listening, and she was listening, but he kept going, and he kept on and on and on and on. And eventually she fell asleep. And when she woke up, he came out of trance, and he said, essentially, I'm sure in a different word, but did you get all that? And she was like, I'm really sorry, I did not get all of that. And he was very angry because the science of yoga was essentially lost in the water. It was at that moment that a small fish came swimming through, right, and said to Shiva, excuse me, I heard everything. I listened to everything. And Shiva says, do you remember it? Can you tell it to other people? And Matsyana said, I can. And he laid on his back, right, and floated all the way up to the surface of the ocean and came onto the shore, where he turned into a man and was the first teacher of yoga, Matsyana. So the fish pose, the asana pose that we do, the heart opener with the heart up and the head back, that is a representation of Matsyana, the first teacher of yoga, or the first disciple of Shiva. Another story of Parvati comes into the creation of Ganesh, who was another very beloved Hindu god. And this is where you can see Parvati holding the aspect of Shakti. So if you remember from a previous lecture, we had Shiva Shakti, right, as the feminine creative force and the masculine creative force. Here is where you see Parvati holding that Shakti essence. And this is in the creation of Ganesh. So in this story, they lived high up on the mountain. So they had a mountain home. And Shiva, of course, would leave for ages to meditate, because that's what Shiva does. And Parvati found herself alone a good long stretch of the time. And she said to Shiva, I want to have a baby. And he was like, yeah, when I get back. Yeah, when I get back. And she essentially said, fuck you, I'm going to do it myself. And so demonstrating that Shakti quality, she impregnated, right, and gave birth to Ganesh, who was a beautiful small boy. And they lived together on the mountain for 7 years before Shiva came home. And Parvati had gone into the bath and told Ganesh, please stand at the door, do not let anybody in, do not let anybody disturb my bath. And here comes this god marching down the path, and he says to this little boy, let me in. And Ganesh says, no, mom's in there, you can't come in. And Ganesh Shiva kind of gave him the whole, do you know who I am routine, and Ganesh said, I don't care who you are. My mother is in the bath, and she told me not to disturb her or let anybody through. At which point Shiva becomes enraged and chops off Ganesh's head. Parvati hears this, comes screaming out of the bath, oh my God, what have you done? Do you know that this is your son? And Shiva is crestfallen, he's heartbroken. And so he calls out to the gods, can somebody please help me, I need to fix this. And it was Brahma, the creator, who came to his aid. The two of them went out into the forest, and they said that the first animal they found would go ahead and, they would take his head back to Ganesh. And the elephant was what they first encountered, and the elephant agreed to sacrifice its head for the life of Ganesh. They brought the head back, and Ganesh was reanimated, which is why you'll see pictures of Ganesh. He is actually a small human, very small human, well, not small, but a small human with the head of an elephant. Big round belly, tiny little feet. He rides on a rat, which is his call to you to maintain your balance. Ganesh is considered the remover of obstacles, and we pray to him when we want things to get out of our way, but mostly when we want to get out of our own way. Ganesh is connected to the first chakra, which is, for humans, issues of survival and safety. And these issues of survival and safety can really get us locked down in fear. And it is that fear which is the primary obstacle. The primary obstacle of all spiritual seekers is fear. And so we say, Jaya Ganesha, Parmal, Parvimal, Shri Ganesha, Rakshama. To bring that remover of obstacles into our hearts so that we no longer have fear. And Ganesh is considered the remover of obstacles because he beat the ultimate obstacle, which was death. Okay, so Ganesh is definitely a beloved Hindu god, and we chant to him rather a lot. So you see the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and their consorts, Sarasvati, Lakshmi, and Parvati / Shakti. And from these mated pairs, we can see Hanuman, and we also see Ganesh, and we can see Ram and Sita, and Krishna, Radha, and so on. So there does kind of stand alone this one goddess who's insanely powerful and does not have a consort. She herself is her own consort. And I consider her a sister, like a little sister to Shiva, but she's not part of the Trinity. And this is Durga, D-U-R-G-A. And Durga is the Great Mother. And she may be, since she's not associated with the masculine Trinity, she very well may be a throwback to the time just before Hinduism took root, where the peoples were a matrilineal, feminist type of society, where they worshipped the Great Mother, the earth herself, the giver of life. And so Durga is the goddess representation of the Great Mother. So when I say that, it's really important that we kind of don't confuse Durga with this Western concept of the Great Mother, or Gaia, who is currently perceived as like warm and fluffy, and the mom who like bakes you cookies and, you know, gives you big fuzzy hugs. True representation of Gaia is not that either. That's a very modern New Age concept. But Durga is the mother who is stern but soft, and loving but disciplined. She is the mother that will handle what is wrong and make sure that you are supported and protected throughout your days. So Durga is very solid, right? She's a very solid goddess, and we pray to her when we are looking for that mother-type guidance that is creative and not creative and destructive at once, you know, where you need to break through something and you need the loving support of the mother in that aspect. I hope you all know what I mean when I say that, when you need your mother to help you, and not necessarily just to love you. Durga has the capacity to spin off into Kali, and we call her Kali Ma. Kali Ma is the aspect of Durga that is the demon slayer. This is the mother that will, you know, pull a truck off of you, you know, pull a truck off of her kid, or kill somebody who's hurting their child. Kali Ma is the demon slayer. And in this type of mythology, the demons that we are slaying are the ones that we throw up out of our impure and improper thoughts and bad ways of behaving. Kali Ma destroys the demons that we bring into our own life. Right now, Kali Ma is really on the rise in the spiritual culture, mostly because we've come so far out of balance with our Great Mother that we need to have these demons slain. Om Dum Durga Pataye Namaha. Even her mantra is Om Dum Durga Pataye Namaha. It's very dark and deep, as the Great Mother is dark and deep. So all of these, there are of course other Hindu divinities. They have bazillions, a huge pantheon. But these are the ones that you're going to see most frequently represented in your Sanskrit mantra practice. So if you find yourself in a class and all of a sudden you're chanting Om Dum Durga in one of these Hindu ragas, then you kind of know where it comes from, and you can then like look to that aspect to say, okay, well, Om Dum Durga, here I am. I'm chanting to the great mother, the dark goddess. How can I utilize that aspect to open up channels within me? How can I use the aspect of Shiva to find the illusions that I'm still harboring? How can I use the aspect of Lakshmi to create greater wealth and prosperity in my material life and my spiritual life? So when these mantras rise up, or you find yourself in these kirtans or in these ragas, then you can have like a real authentic understanding of how you can utilize each one of these deifics to a purpose within your life, so that you can create the process or complete the process of heading back to source unity. So we use the aspect to understand the one. Yeah?